Hello and good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Beck, Education Program Assistant here at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. We're delighted to have you join us today for the webinar entitled Business Security Essentials with MDCentric Technologies. Before I introduce our speakers, just a few housekeeping items to attend to. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a wraparound email will include the recording and the slides, and that'll be sent out to all registrants. You can use the chat box below for questions when prompted to reply, and we will do our best to triage them as they come in and get to those at the end of today's session. So now to provide a brief introduction of our presenters. Today we have Clint Harris, CEO, and Mike Kaufman, IT Systems Engineer with MDCentric Technologies. Founded in 2002, MDCentric Technologies partners with security-conscious mid-sized businesses to provide managed IT services, infrastructure as a service, cybersecurity, and telephone services. MDCentric Technologies is committed to fostering a culture where their expert technicians wake up happy to go to work every day and solve problems. Can I see you shaking your head? Michael and Clint, yes, happy to go to work. Creating solutions that are thoughtful and insightful instead of quick fixes, and partnering with clients to learn the ins and outs of their businesses rather than just being another vendor. So with that, I want to say thanks for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to our speakers.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for your time. Take it away, Mike.
Sorry, I guess I was muted. Hello, everybody. And that is true. I do like going to work every day because it is my life and I enjoy what I do. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right. You see everything? All right. So what we'll discuss, well, what's phishing? Why is it a problem? Who's behind it? Understanding how it affects your organization and who are the victims, stages of the attacks, real world examples, best practices, and how to stay ahead of the, attackers. Some quick stats and Q&A. All right, so first of all, the definition of the word phishing. It's a play on the word phishing, which is an attempt originally via either a message or email to lure computer users into revealing sensitive personal information such as passwords, birth dates, credit cards, and social security numbers, either in plain text or convincing the user to download a malicious payload, malware, which will reveal and send this information to the attacker. To perpetrate this type of con, excuse me, the communication pretends to be from a coworker, an official representative of a website, or another institution that has likely done business with you. The term phishing came about in the mid-1990s when hackers began using fraudulent emails to phish for information from unsuspecting users. And since these early hackers were often referred to as freaks with a PH, the term became known as phishing with a PH. So there are a few different types of, or subtypes of phishing. There's spear phishing, which is a targeted attack on a few individuals. Typically they do it on one or two main targets, but it's usually also done in the later stage of the attacks after probing the company that's been targeted. There's vishing, which is also known as voice phishing, and I'm pretty sure everybody's gotten one of those spoof calls pretending to be the IRS or Microsoft technical support stating that they have hackers in your firewall. So real verbiage. Oh, sorry, went back here by mistake. Let me go back, use the scroll wheel. All right, so we got smishing, which is basically SMS-based phishing. So you'll get a text message that says, update your Amazon billing information or AT&T billing information, which I got one just last night, and I included it in here. And then there's whaling, which is going after a big target, or the CEO, CFO, CIO, all those C-level executives in an attempt to catch the big one. So why is phishing a big problem? So it's been on the rise basically, but it has little effort and a very small upfront cost. Attackers can quickly gain access to valuable data and leverage great returns on their upfront cost. There's phishing kits, which I'm starting to call them tackle boxes. I've seen that term thrown around there, but they're basically toolkits that automate the entire process for the attacker to send out massive amounts of emails without much technical know-how. Phishing can affect you personally. They can steal money from your bank accounts. They can file taxes under another person's name. They can also affect you professionally. You can lose corporate funds, expose personal information of customers and coworkers. Files can be held for ransom, blackmail, or extortion, and it can damage your employer's reputation. So phishing is extremely successful due to its volume and ease. The seniority of phishing as a resource for hackers has allowed it to mature with technology fairly quickly. And as in traditional phishing, these scammers send out those millions of hooks and only requires a small percentage to take the bait and click the link, which is what makes it so profitable, because it's, in numbers. Once the person is compromised or falls victim to the phish, the entire organization becomes game for the attacker, and they will attempt to persist in your environment for as long as possible. Sometimes they even spread laterally to your partners or your vendors. So those who usually fall for the first wave usually become the foothold for more targeted future attacks, and the best time to revise your security plan is at the first sight of these attacks. It's very, very difficult to do it later on. Excuse me. So who's behind the breaches? So attribution is often difficult and sometimes impossible task. However, part of the statistics do overlap with each other here. So please note that this is not a representation of 100% of the sample size in total. Only a percentage of a collected sample size that has overlapping attributes or other relations. So for example, an external actor can have a criminal, can also be a criminal gang, and a criminal gang can also have multiple parties. So organized criminal gangs utilizing phishing techniques have risen from 39 to 55% in just a year's time. And it might have something to do with COVID. I don't know yet. The data is still out there for that. But while internal actors like disgruntled employees have actually dropped this year, that's also being related to people working from home. So not easy access to corporate infrastructure. So interesting. So what are the attackers going after? So ultimately, attackers' end goal is financial gain. But through this, they're trying to get users to reveal those sensitive details like passwords, birth dates, credit cards, and social security numbers. Many times, the user's computer is also infected, and it could be creating a botnet or some sort of persistence for attackers to then move laterally to other targets, such as partners, family members, or even colleagues. And so according to the 2020, I think it's the Verizon DBIR, the Data Breach Investigation Report, financial gain still remains a primary motivator, contributing to about 81% of attacks in 2020, up from 71% 86 in 2020, up from 71 in 2019. Espionage remains a distant secondary motive, but the decreasing numbers could be due to more criminal organizations shifting their focus towards financial gain instead of, what is it called? Corporate secrets, those things, strategic advantage. It's also due to we're in a time of great fear and uncertainty. So everybody's gonna, have that knee-jerk reaction when they're getting that AT&T bill that they don't know what's going on. They have to click a link. So anyways, when a computer gets ransomware and decides, and the company decides to pay the attacker, it not only paints a target on your back saying that you pay easily, but other criminal organizations then also see to it. And it also makes the financial motive more lucrative for other criminals. So phishing is a form of social engineering. It's a manipulation tactic that exploits human error in order to gain private information, access, or valuable data. Many of the phishing examples that I've observed, that most of them are poorly written, and they often contain a lot of grammatical errors, but it's a common theme, and we think it is believed to be done purposefully, since it targets users who may not be paying close attention to details. However, in more recent months, they've been getting better at looking legitimate, but they always use the same social engineering tactics in order to get you to take action. They have a very good understanding of human psychology, better than the average person. They understand psychology better than the technology that they're using. So whatever the hot topic is, from coronavirus to elections, you can guarantee that they will be the first in line to exploit human psychology for their own capital gain. So phishing emails typically contain content which expresses a sense of urgency in completing some sort of task at hand for a person of importance. Messages like, kindly complete this urgent task for me, or I need you to quickly do something very important for me, should be setting off alarms in your head. So who are the victims? So 47% of breach victims were small and medium-sized businesses, and that's from the 2020 Verizon DBIR. Of those 47%, 15 were in healthcare, 10% in finance, and 16% are in the public sector. So companies that are also nonprofits are included in that 16%. So 2019 losses just for the healthcare industry alone were around 25 billion. And when taking into account the turnover of customers, so like the churn rate and loss of reputation and goodwill, the average cost of lost business due to a data breach was approximately $4.13 million per company globally. And so in 2019, 58% of victims had personal data compromised, just alone. So how's it done? So there's many ways to do it, but I think this is just the play-by-play from a pretty well-known playbook. So the first step is recon. That's the first kinetic action. Usually that requires some sort of open source intelligence. And by open source intelligence, I mean like they research you on LinkedIn, on the company website, via your competition, even just normal Google searches. So they also do their homework. They ask questions like, who's important? What do they do with the business? Or who do they do business with? And what is publicly available about the company? Next stage is weaponization. So the attacker uses that information in the previous phase to create things they'll need to get into the network. So that could be like a believable spear phishing email coming from an executive IT department or a vendor. They craft watering holes, which are just fake web pages or sites used to steal the information, such as like Office 365 logins or like a COVID-19 stimulus page. And then they collect tools to use once they gain access into their target network. See, I clicked that a little prematurely there. So, third stage is the delivery method. So that's when the attack starts. Phishing emails are sent, watering holes are posted to the internet, and the attacker waits for all the data to roll in. Basically, they've gone live. If the email contains a weaponized attachment, the attacker can actually wait for someone to open it, and we'll see those start to roll in. So fourth stage is the exploitation. That's really where the fun begins for the attacker. So as usernames and passwords start to arrive, they're used against all public-facing web-based email systems and VPN connections into company networks. If a weaponized attachment is opened, then the attacker will begin remotely accessing the infected computers in order to gain a better idea of the internal infrastructure and business processes and what other systems can be exploited. So step number 5 is the installation or persistence. So that means they make sure that they continue to have access to the network or your email system. They will install backdoors to make sure that they can always get back in, and they'll also create mail forwarding rules on your Office 365 account or in your email application in order to isolate the user from emails about resetting passwords. Hey, your contact information's been updated, so on. Sixth stage is command and control. The attacker has full access and it can impersonate your email and further attack more employees and vendors in order to spread laterally. And the 7th stage is that they have total control. They can achieve their objective, and that could be stealing information on employees, exfiltrating data, possibly even infecting customers, stealing product designs, whatever they want to do. That's the last stage. If you take something like, for example, if you take something like online orders, they could shut down your order taking system or delete orders from the system or even generate fake ones. and have them shipped to your customer at your cost. So I have some real world examples that I've collected. I think all but one in here is some that I've collected. So experience is merely the name of men given, the name men have given to their mistakes. So this is a Microsoft credential harvesting example that does pretty well trying to replicate 365's login page. The email is actually specifically formatted to contain the email of the person that is being sent this, and it's interesting how it does it. But it's a specially formatted Google link which redirects you to like a Scheiding Rostock. I don't know if you can see that. It's like rostock.de. I'll show you here. So when you click on it, it actually takes you to scheidingrostock.de, and it injects the email into that. And for one good reason, because then it looks like you're trying to log in. So when you click on that, it actually just shows you like a password field. And no matter what you put in there, it's going to return an error because that's the way it was designed. It's a form that just contains an error. So every time you click on it, it says wrong password. And that's pretty smart because then you'll keep trying different passwords in it. So the more passwords you keep putting in it, the more passwords they have. So you could try every variation of your old password and new password. Doesn't matter. They're going to get all of them. They're going to try all of them against your accounts. Pretty clever. So another one was I received like a phishing email a couple of weeks ago from a compromised account that I've emailed in the past for sure. I never get attachments from this person. So once I saw it, I immediately knew something was going on and I wanted to open that in like a controlled environment. So the attachment's actually an Excel spreadsheet. It has something called a legacy macro in it, but not many antiviruses pick it up because it hasn't been seen in almost 10 years. So it's an interesting one. So, but when I ran it through a couple of sandboxes, it actually picked it up and flagged it as malicious. So, but I never really got to see what was in it. This is just your generic PayPal, you know, phishing attempt. So it's the highlight here is that, you know, it's not from PayPal. It's coming from an Outlook account. It has that sense of urgency, which is typical in almost every single phishing email I've seen. And it takes you to a fake login page, which I don't know if you can see at the top, but it is not PayPal's website. So big red flag right there. And I'm sure it does the same thing as 365's, where it just sends a bunch of errors back to you. Also, one thing to note is that that little green lock, that does not mean that the website's legitimate. Anybody can get that now. It's just another tactic that they've evolved their, you know, attack to include. So here's one that was kind of like a direct deposit. I call them ACH frauds because they're just schemes to change direct deposits. But this one actually, this was one that was followed through with. So it came from a Gmail account that was not the original person that sent its Gmail. So they stressed urgency, of course. Hey, I need to change this by the next effective pay date. There's the Gmail address that is not this person's email address, which you'd have to hover over to see it, but yeah, that was convincing enough. So they actually provided a routing number and account number, which was amazing. I guess as soon as I saw that, I called whoever owned that routing number, but then also they responded back, hey, you got a return on that bank from your direct deposit last week to this new account. It's a frozen account. Well, that's because when we saw that, you know, we sent out a bolo on that that routing number. So they shut it down pretty quickly. That does not happen more than once. So it's pretty good luck. Here's one that happened to a client of ours. It was actually, let's see, this was actually an email correspondence in the past from about January. And then I guess a vendor account, still don't know the real reason why this happened, got compromised, and they downloaded these emails and then they used them to fraudulently put the original sender's name in the email, you know, name field, and use the conversation from the past to make it appear legitimate. Problem is that it's not legitimate because it's not from Steven. Steven's original email is Steven Dot, and this is coming from a John Gillis at Friendly Kia. no comment. So the attachment download was actually just a zip file, and it contains some, generic crypto locker. So it was a good attempt, but I'm glad that they reported that, because I've never seen a client get compromised, have their emails downloaded and then used as kind of like validation that, hey, I'm the real person, as if they wouldn't check that it's coming from John Gillis. So good one. And then I got one last night where it was smishing. It's a good example. It's from AT&T, my payment's on hold, and then it had a little phone number there. So I decided to actually call, I called that number, and it is actually just an IVR, like asking you for your credit card number. And I do have a recording. I'm not sure if this will play over here. Hold on. I won't play the whole thing. It's pretty long.
Hey, Michael, we're not hearing
Yep.
that.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that to work, but
Oh, okay.
it's
I
not
didn't know if
working.
you could hear it, but we couldn't, and you were thinking that we could. Thank you.
No, it's not, but you put in your credit card and then it just hangs up on you. So, but anyways, I found out who owned this number, and I decided to report it to the carrier, which was bandwidth.com. Then they emailed me back, after I submitted it through their form. Hey, we've got this. And then I got an email this morning that they've actually closed that. They've disconnected that number. So if you report things to us, that's technically what I'll do. I'll take it to the last step. All right, so best practices in staying safe. So I think overall, you got to enforce that two-factor as a business process. So if someone sends you an email with specific requirements, follow up via another medium and confirm the request. You could do that with private chat. We can't do a physical visit anymore, but where applicable, do that within safe distance. And you just a regular phone call. Sometimes that's even the best two-factor you have available. This is stuff you could do absolutely for free. Just inspecting links. This is one that I see people miss all the time. Fairly easy to do. Just hover over it. If it doesn't look legit, forward it to your internal IT. Have them examine it. Maybe throw it up in a sandbox, see what comes out of it. If it's legit, they'll send a, hey, this is good to click on. If it's not, they'll quarantine it. Check the sender's email. Did it originate from the corporate domain? Also one that's easy to miss sometimes on mobile, like Outlook mobile, it does not display the email. I think it does now, but it used to just display the name and you had to click on it. So then also just, does it feel right? Like, is this how they talk? Yeah, like check the content and the grammar. That requires running the entire email through a fine-tooth comb. Ask yourself, do they really type like this? Or I mean, you'll know them better, really. If you don't know them, call them. If it has like if it's trying to incite panic or urgency, emails should not be the only official form of communication for financial or important business processes to be changed. Follow up via another medium just to be sure. Sorry, attachments. If you get an email with no context that has an attachment, check everything else. If nothing fits, call us or somebody like an IT technician or a security engineer to inspect it. We'll probably delete it, as there should be a clear context trail leading to the attachment. If you didn't ask for it, you don't need it. And if you're still unsure, ask them to call you. So these are more things geared towards subscription-based models, but there is software out there that can do security awareness training on business email compromise, and that should be regularly conducted. The environment changes very quickly, and the latest trends should be a regular topic visited during these trainings. Should regularly send those phishing emails to employees in order to reinforce their security awareness training. Strategically deploy the right software to the right people. So HR, execs, and finance need more granular protection due to the volume of emails they get. Solutions like Pixum and PhishMe actually assist with this. Hold on, there we go, software, money. Pixum is a good one. Then I got some DNS filtering, which is more for the entire enterprise for, just blocking malicious websites from the get-go so you can't even see it. Cisco Umbrella is a good solution for that. Antivirus, just any antivirus is better than no antivirus. I'll tell you that. We personally use WebRoot and Carbon Black for our servers over here. And then you got to develop the human firewalls. It's essential to invest sufficiently in employee training so that the human firewall can provide the last adequate line of defense against increasing sophisticated phishing attempts and other social engineering attacks. Embrace that two-factor verification by employees and make it a business process. So I'm opening this up to any questions.
Mike, before we open to questions, firstly, thank
Sure.
you so much for that. Really well done. And for all those in the audience, I just wanted to stress that Mike is not a member of our sales team, is actually a technician who lives and breathes this every day. And he'll tell you that he actually really likes this stuff. It's something that he does when he's not at work. And I think it's really important and special to be able to have a resource like that give you this presentation, because he's not taking it from a sales, but just from an information perspective. And he gets into details that we're not going to see other places. I know some of those things might have got a little technical, so it's good to ask questions here if you have any. And just as a quick recap from my perspective as more of a sales role, we see that about 90% of all attacks occur or begin with someone with a staff member or employee taking an action that essentially opens the door for the attackers. So these examples that Mike gives of phishing emails coming through and asking questions, asking for credentials, asking to open attachments, these are all things that are just opening the door. We can have a lot of security layers in place, but we can't stop employees from clicking on the wrong link necessarily if they get through. So keep that in mind. Before you click, just double check. If it's a call to a staff member, a CFO who's asking for financial information, maybe just call real quick and ask her, is this real? Or call your IT provider and say, does this look legit? Couple of things you might want to write down to check with that are really important from an IT perspective. You should have multiple layers in place. So you should have a firewall in place. You should be using an email filter that's going to check for spam and block it before it gets to your email box. As Mike mentioned, we should have file-based antivirus, which is very traditional, been around for a long time. And over the past few years, a lot of companies have come up with a next generation web-based, artificial intelligence-based antivirus. Mike mentioned Carbon Black, which is one really like. There are 3 or 4 on the market there. So you're going to have files, and that'll be scanned, and also behavior. Is your computer acting funny in an unusual way because it might have downloaded a virus? Something like Carbon Black will lock that down and prevent it from getting worse. You'll also check into Cisco Umbrella or OpenDNS, some sort of DNS filtering, which is going to help keep bad guys from websites from being able to access you, or for your staff from accessing bad websites, again, with artificial intelligence. So it's going to stay one step ahead of those attacks. So it'll prevent a 0-day attack, which is really important now because the bad guys are changing what they do every day, trying to stay a step ahead of our tools. And ongoing education, which Mike mentioned, make sure that your staff is always being trained so that they are not going to fall for these tricks. Some of them are very simple, but we all get rushed. We all have too many things to do. Slow down, use your education, and prevent it. And one thing that we didn't mention, but is really important, is your backups. How are you backing up your data on your computers, on your servers, and do you have an on-site and a cloud-based backup? We should be able to look at multiple places to go back a day or a week or maybe even a month, so that if you do get attacked, we can control the amount of data that we're willing to lose to prevent us having to pay for a ransomware, for instance. Because as Mike mentioned, once you do that once, they know that you're apt to pay and you're going to get hit again. I'm sorry, Mike. I know
multiple times.
That's right.
All very relevant information, though. Thank you.
Sure, sure.
Yeah,
So, perfect. Now, Mike, Rebecca, if there are any questions, we'd love to take them.
absolutely.
Oops, there we go. Yes, we have a couple of questions coming in. Lots of thanks and praise for the presentation and your thoroughness, as well as these examples are really fascinating to see how crafty cyber criminals have become and how we can stay one step ahead of them.
Yeah.
A question from Rick, is there any particular time of year that is more prone to attacks? Now that everyone is working from home, are these attacks on the rise?
Yeah, actually, it used to be every tax season we would see quite a few come through in quick, rapid succession. But now with everybody working at home, um, every other week I've been seeing one of our clients get hit 12 times in a day, and it just keeps getting blocked and keeps getting blocked and keeps getting blocked, and they just keep trying. So then it's like there's peaks and troughs for sure. Yeah, there is. But right now it's kind of early to determine when, because since we're not done with the year yet, when the largest amount have come through. But so far it has been right around when everybody started working from home during lockdown, just like right around February, March. That was probably the peak this year so far. It's gradually been getting less and less, but still not zero, which would be in an ideal world.
Right.
I'd add to that the holidays are a popular time, right? We're all getting more and more busy, and we're doing a lot of shopping, and so the attackers know that they're latching onto our behavior, and things like COVID, any big news story that comes out, they're going to latch onto that and send something out. Click here for your latest COVID tracker, things like that. Whatever the next big worldwide event is, they will latch onto that and they'll hit you and try and get you to click onto that. Wherever we're desperate for information, they're going to hit.
Yep, like flies after vinegar. But I think I've seen a couple of those payroll protection, I think it's a triple P loans, right after they started announcing that there was just an influx of these fake triple P loan applications and grants and all this other stuff that redirects you to websites that actually look like a government website, but they're not hosted on a .gov, so they're not. But anybody could get one. It's just very difficult, so keep that in mind too. But yeah, I've seen a couple of them so far.
Yeah. Another question from Brenda. Is there any way to track these people down, these phishers? Or do they just disappear and move on to the next attack?
So there was a recent criminal group which was what's it called? They were not arrested yet, but they're basically put on a do not fly list, and if they try, they'll be picked up by Interpol or whoever. But they do get tracked down eventually. It's just very hard to do the attribution, especially with criminal gangs. They do get sloppy sometimes, but nation state actors are the ones that are a primary concern because they're basically invisible in this world, since they have access to like state level infrastructure and some tools that I think the NSA used to use and no longer uses because they were leaked. So those are the scary ones, but by any means they have been attributed in the past. It's just going forward, it's a difficult thing to do. Things like criminal gangs that facilitate in internet spamming and conning, like with the Social Security, fraudulent Social Security websites that mostly prey on older people. They've been getting picked up at a nice rate. I mean, but it's still, you can't catch all of them. Some of them do disappear, but eventually they make mistakes and they get tracked down. But yeah, so they do.
I think
eventually
that these attacks are not very hard. And it's pretty easy to mask where you're coming from if you know what you're doing. You could be in Connecticut and you could be sending emails from Russia. I mean, it's just very easy. And they're so easy to get, it's so easy to get started that even though we might be tracking people down, there's 10 more people getting in to the business.
Right.
So,
it looks very lucrative too, since everybody's, going towards CryptoLocker and ransomware. When people pay these ransoms, it's making it more attractive. So the whole point is to get those, backups good at multiple places to get that human firewall working and have at least some sort of endpoint protection. because then you won't have to pay the ransom. You just say, all right, we'll roll the systems back a week and call it a day. And usually that's what we end up doing too sometimes. So we don't have to pay the ransoms. I think we've come across a couple of clients who were in a difficult place where we rolled it back like an entire week. The whole team dedicated on a weekend, and by Monday they were back up and running. It was, yeah. So that's the first line of defense from having to pay these people to multiply like some sort of internet virus.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. And I'll also mention that we hear a lot of stories of things like local governments, and they get shut down and they've had to pay these huge ransoms.
Yep,
And
that's right.
the sad thing is that's because they're using older systems. They haven't paid attention or invested in upgrading their backups or their security layers, or they're on very old operating systems. And if they had made a little better in time and investment into their IT infrastructure, they wouldn't have had to pay. But it's a hard thing to invest in because it's not costing right now until you've experienced, and then you realize how valuable that investment is.
It's 2020 there.
That's great. And we are in 2020, aren't we?
That's right.
All right. Well, feel free if you have any further questions, anyone that's joined us today, to add those in the chat box. Go ahead and ask Michael, you and or Clint to give us any final thoughts or sort of give us any takeaways that you want us to make sure we part with.
Yeah, I got one. So last time I did this presentation for another client, I had spoken shortly before with a friend regarding this whole work from home thing. And we both agreed that, it does absolutely take longer to get things done, and especially at home. One of the reasons is that I can't just get up and go ask somebody something, and that impacts us from the perspective of scams as well. You can't just go ask your boss if they wanted you to send that information. You actually have to use another method, so like Slack or Microsoft Teams. But you do need to still apply that same two-factor model, like I mentioned earlier, to verify the sender of whatever you're getting, especially when it comes to sending out pertinent information or money transfers. If you just make that part of your business process as a company, that will return dividends in not getting scammed. Just make that something when, when somebody asks for something pertinent, you should expect a phone call back. And if you don't get a phone call back, then maybe that's something, or, where somebody has violated a process. And have a discussion with that person. So use the fact that you are working from home as an opportunity to take the time to do things right, and then maybe this will carry over when things return to normal eventually.
That's good, Mike. And I would add, Rebecca, that this changing environment, all of us going remote, makes security, like Mike mentioned, even harder. It's easier to protect a small environment, but once we get people going all over the place out of that environment, it's harder. So even if you've had a recent sit down with your IT provider or your IT team to look over what your security stance is, you need to look at that again now. If it's been a month, we should do it again now. And you should continue to do that every quarter, every half a year. Just stay on it, because it's really changing. And it doesn't seem like you need to, because it seems like everything's working, but you really need to keep up with it and make sure that you're staying ahead as much as you can of the bad guys, because they're trying to beat us every day.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. This was really insightful. Sounds like organizations and companies, as long as they're making those incremental changes and they're building into their budget these IT improvements, that that they can stay hopefully one step ahead of these attacks. So that's also something that I think about, and something it continues to be a way to protect our organizations and our missions and our customers too.
The good guys are working hard too, Rebecca. We just have to implement those tools.
Yeah, that's great. So Salima has gone ahead and put our outro slides up. You all can track those as we before we depart. I did want to say a quick thanks to you, Michael and Clint, for joining us today and for sharing this important information. We really appreciate you taking the time to prepare that. The slideshow was impressive. It had a lot of moving parts, so well done. That takes some time. Also hiding all that identifying information too and blurring those things out. So well done.
Got it.
I appreciate it. And wanted to also say thanks to everyone who joined the call today. especially our members. We appreciate you all being members. If you're interested in becoming a member or learning more about membership, I'm going to go ahead and just put the link there in the chat box. You can click on that. And we have plenty of upcoming trainings and webinars that you can join. Obviously, our members get to save some money on those things. So the return is in that initial investment in membership. I'm a part of the membership team along with Salima and Katrina. You're more than welcome to contact us at any time, ask us any questions, and we're always happy to help and provide assistance where and when we can. So with that said, I just want to thank you all again for joining us, and look forward to seeing you all again soon, virtually, for the time being.
Thanks all.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. You too. Bye.